Hi, everyone. Welcome to week one, class two, the Thursday class of sports journalism, COM 294 at UIC. We're getting a class number eventually because this course is now both fall and spring semesters because of popular demand. I thought we had a good start to the class. Just a few reminders I'll cover here, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty of the course. You can, just as a reminder, you can use either our Canvas account here, or you can go into Google Drive, either one. The weekly modules have all of our course materials. That's actually for a different course because they don't have our Canvas course set up yet at the time I'm recording this. However, I've got the course built out. So we have the modules, and then, of course, the syllabus you can just access over here by clicking on syllabus, and the course syllabus will pop up. And again, I rarely, if ever, change the course syllabus for any reason. Reminder too, in the course syllabus, you'll see the weekly schedule down below. And we're currently on Thursday, August 27th. This link to our video that you're watching right now is right here. It's also in our weekly class folders, our week one class folder right here where it says pre-recorded. In the sports class schedule, week one is right down here, right underneath what we covered on Tuesday. So just as a reminder, our class doesn't meet live until week three. Weeks one and two are pre-recorded. Tuesday of week three will be on Zoom, although it'll be it'll be live. I'll actually be talking to you directly. And then Thursday of week three will be meeting in person. So, pay close attention to the syllabus schedule so you don't show up to campus and you don't need to be there. Just a reminder, Otter.ai is acceptable for recording the class and note-taking when we're in person. Try not to do it on Zoom unless you have an LOA letter, then you can use a recorded note-taker. And that's always on your LOA letters. I just don't want people recording our Zoom classes and going back to bed and not participating in class. You do have to keep your cameras on once we're meeting live on Zoom. Just a little update there, but Otter's very handy for doing interviews, recording our in-person classes, and so on. Make sure to follow my Blue Sky account as you're setting up your Blue Sky and Medium accounts for Friday and putting them in the Google Doc. My Blue Sky account is a good roadmap too for kind of dropping in your bio. You can click here on Edit Profile and drop in. It'll have some text in here. Just delete it out. Put your first and last name, your description. You can click up here and add your image. If you want to add a header image, you can click on the little camera here. I add my books in there, just to have something there. Need to have a description, 2-3 sentences that describe you, and you're good to go. You can follow some journalists. I've recommended a few up here. It's called my starter pack, smart journalists to follow. These aren't sports journalists, but they're just good people to follow. They're very well versed in journalism. I do have some fun ones up there, The Onion. But we'll get into the sports accounts a little later in the semester. That's really what you're after. And I've got a whole list of good athletes to follow on Blue Sky, sports journalists to follow on Blue Sky, and so on. So just make sure you've got both of those accounts set up and that you've dropped both of those links by noon on Friday, this Friday, on this Google Doc here. You can type on it, it's editable, and you can drop in your name, Medium, and Blue Sky. So have that done by noon Friday, because I do check. Even though I'm several time zones away, I still do check on homework. So make sure you've got that done, and those links are both off the syllabus and off of our weekly schedule here. Wanted to talk a little bit about sports journalism and really what it is, as opposed to some of the other stuff that is sports or team or league PR disguised as journalism. A sports journalist is out covering a sporting event. Maybe it's from the Chicago Tribune or Chicago Sun-Times reporter that's covering a Bears game. Patrick Finley, former student of mine from many years ago, covers the Chicago Bears, right now. And he goes out and covers them in a very neutral way. He's not a fan of the team. He reports on them. He reports facts, documents things through interviews, using data. and then writes about it. And sometimes, the players and the team don't like what he writes about. And it's anything from, the stadium issues all the way over to, the score of Sunday's games. So he's working independently as a journalist. Same with the TV stations, although they're a little, more, kind of chummy with the athletes and coaches, a little more than many journalists would like. Your radio commentary guys from the WSCR, The Score, ESPN 1000, they're more or less commentators. They talk about issues and offer opinions. Some of them do a little journalism. They'll do some research and some reporting, but most of them are there to tell you what they think about sports journalism. Whereas, the reporters that are out covering it journalistically are acting independently. But most teams and leagues now have their own reporters. MLB.com has reporters covering each MLB team and reporting on it. Yeah, and they do kind of the nuts and bolts, day-to-day game stories and stuff like that. But they don't do anything like an investigation. They don't do a lot of reporting on contracts and the really juicy stuff about franchise movement or stadium issues, things like that. And teams also hire social media influencers to work for their teams and talk about what's going on with the team. Many times they're hired to do video. And one of the best in the business at this, Hannah Peary, she works for the Houston Rockets. She's their team reporter and insider. And she comes from a broadcast background. She used to be a broadcast news reporter. She covered hurricanes and all kinds of crazy stuff. She went to the University of Florida as an undergrad. Her job's a little bit different than what like maybe the Houston Chronicles, Rockets beat reporter does. She carries a DSLR camera with her, I think usually a couple of phones as well. And she records things, and this is her TikTok page. She's also on Instagram quite a bit. She kind of takes you behind the scenes, and has access to the players. She's sometimes talks about her job and what she's done over the years. Talks about a woman working in sports journalism. She's talking about that in this video here. I'm not going to play through all of them. There's so many of them here. She shares some personal stuff to her travels and things like that. The team went over and traveled through Europe, so she went along with them and did a lot of reporting from the field. And she interjects herself into the stories, which is a little different than what we do as a sports beat reporter. But she gets some great access and does some good, fun insider reporting and reports on some really funny things. Here she's talking about her college career when she was working at the University of Florida and reporting and what she does now for the Rockets. She kind of talks about the difference between the two. It's a great point of view, and she's one hell of a videographer. And comes up with really cool ideas, and is goofing around with George Mirasan and other players, because she's short, they're tall, and the players, respect her and understand her role and understand what she's doing. And she edits these clips and often gets them up during the games. I mean, she's a very good video editor too. And you can see, the Cubs have people that do this, the White Sox, most pro sports teams have some type of videographer following them around. They just happen to use her in more of a social media influencer form. It's a really good example of how you can take journalism skills and apply them in different ways. This is more of like a PR role than what you would do as a sports writer, which is what I was. I covered the LA Rams, did the Cubs, Bears, White Sox, and went out and just wrote about the team. I wasn't, recording a lot of video or anything like that. So it uses multiple social channels, Twitter, Instagram, she's pretty big on, of course, Twitter. A lot of followers, or Twitter, I meant TikTok, has a lot of followers. So that's the difference. And there's something here that I want you to read. Maybe you can hit the pause button and do it. It's the SPJ Code of Ethics. As a journalist, we follow ethical boundaries. It's not necessarily legal boundaries, but they're more ethical, as opposed to what we have the right to do versus what's the right thing to do. What we have the right to do is what we have the right to do legally is report on, government or, sports teams or whatever. But what's the right thing to do, is often falls into question. So there's 4 areas of the SPGA Code of Ethics: seek truth and report it. And it's got all of these down here. It's got little examples. If you hover over this, it'll have a little pop-up menu and the arrows. He's talking about never plagiarizing, always attribute. Make sure you read through each one of these. Minimize harm, act independently is a really big one for sports journalists. As journalists, yeah, we don't get involved with the athletes or the coaches. We maintain, kind of a separation from them. Even though we have access to them and can interview them often before or after games, the NFL not before, but definitely after, have access to practices, things like that. Being accountable and transparent is also very big in sports journalism. So make sure you've read through these because they're going to become applicable in some case studies we're going to look at versus we take a look at throughout the semester. One of those case studies is coming from our guest speaker, Lauren Camplin. She's a post producer at ESPN. Her first job there, she started there. She was a student of mine at DePaul University. Had her for 7 classes, and she wound up landing at ESPN. She explains in the video how she wound up there. Worked her way up from the very bottom, and is now a post producer, which is a pretty high ranking position. She's been there 15 years. So when you turn on the College World Series or, maybe a college basketball game or there's tournament game or something like that, a lot of the graphics, look and feel, the intro is produced by her and her team. So it's really cool. She grew up in Chicago, was a big Bulls fan, really into sports, and found her way into sports journalism. So I've done a 19-minute interview with her. It's very important that you watch this. I will probably quiz you on it when we get back in week 3. The video isn't on YouTube. You have to click on this link here. It'll take you into our Google Drive folder. And the video's right up here, the interview with Camplin. I talked to her about a wide range of topics, but mostly about a big news story she wound up having to produce on the fly. It just happened. She didn't know it was going to happen. During a sports event she was running, became a live news event. And she had to make some very difficult decisions about what to put on the air and what not to put on the air as the producer. And at the time, I think she was 2 years into her career, that she moved from overnights, where she was editing video for the morning and late night sports centers for the West Coast, to doing Sports Center at 4 p.m. Eastern time or 4 p.m. Chicago time, 5 p.m. Eastern. And it involved the Boston Marathon. That's all I'm going to tell you. I'll let her carry the rest in the video. So it's very important that you watch it. It's 19 minutes. So do run it and maybe take a pause at the 9-minute mark or something to give yourself a little bit of a break. So read her ethics email here too. She sent me an email after this breaking news event, and she talks to me about why ethics training is so important, why I have you guys read the SPJ Code of Ethics. And at the time as a student, she didn't think it was a big deal, but boy, it was a big deal that night or that day when she was covering that story. I also have a little document here called Getting It Right versus Getting It First, and how it applies to sports journalism. Readers aren't going to remember you for getting something first. They will remember you if you get something wrong, though. Adam Rittenberg, who's going to be one of our guest speakers later this semester, he's a former student of mine as well, covers college football in the Big Ten for ESPN. He's going to come in and talk a little bit about that, about making sure you've got the story correct and well sourced before you run with it. So make sure you've read through this, because it covers a big mistake that journalists make. This news literacy project graphic, just take a look at that. You can blow it up in here, download it, and make it bigger. It just kind of talks about the flow of news in journalism. It applies to sports too. I'll talk about it a little bit when we get back in person, because it really applies to how sports news flows around the globe right now, and it literally does flow around the globe. So a lot to do this week. The main thing is watching Lauren Camplin's video interview, and think about this, and we'll talk about it a little bit when I get back. How the SPJ Code of Ethics applies there. Just as a reminder, make sure you subscribe to these newsletters. I talked about it in our previous video. And your homework is setting up those Blue Sky and Medium accounts by noon Friday. Follow me on Blue Sky. Subscribe to all of the newsletters. And read a couple of these short pieces on sports writing fundamentals, because we're going to talk in the videos next week about sports fundamentals. We also, and I'm giving you a little preview here, Steve Alford, former University of Indiana or Indiana University basketball player, won a national title there. He's head basketball coach for the men's team at the University of Nevada. He talks about NIL money for college athletes and the transfer portal. John Calipari, who's at Arkansas now, formerly at Kentucky. He also has his very strong opinion on NIL and the transfer portal. Watch these videos; they're very short, but they get to just about one of the big issues in college athletics right now. We'll talk about that with some of the people who visit our class that cover college athletics. We'll talk to the coach, women's basketball coach at UIC too. She'll talk about it. So that's all I have for you now. Week 2, we'll have more videos. And then week 3, we'll start meeting live. So, make sure you keep up with these recorded videos. They're very, very important. Email me if you have any questions or any concerns. I will be checking my email regularly. Thanks, and watch that Lauren Camplin interview. Very important.